At 9:04 on the morning of December 6, 1917, Halifax was struck by a blast so violent that much of the city first interpreted it as an enemy attack. Nearly 2,000 people were killed and thousands were injured. The source was not a bomb dropped from the air. It was a burning French cargo ship inside the harbor. The central reversal is what makes the Halifax explosion so important. The people watching the fire had no ordinary visual clue that the ship had become one of the largest explosive charges ever assembled by accident. Halifax was a strategic Atlantic port during the First World War. Troops, food, fuel, and munitions passed through a harbor protected by narrow approaches and wartime traffic controls. On that clear Thursday morning, the French ship Mont-Blanc entered carrying high explosives. The Norwegian vessel Imo was moving outward after delays. In the Narrows, a sequence of course changes, signals, and misunderstood intentions brought the ships onto intersecting paths. Each bridge crew expected the other vessel to yield more decisively. Shortly before 9, Imo's bow struck Mont-Blanc on the starboard side. The collision itself did not detonate the cargo. It damaged containers of benzol stored on deck, and the volatile fuel spilled into the hold. When Imo reversed, metal scraping and movement created an ignition source. Fire spread rapidly across Mont-Blanc. The crew knew what the ship carried and abandoned it, rowing toward the Dartmouth shore while trying to warn anyone close enough to hear them. From land, the burning ship looked like a spectacular harbor fire. It drifted toward Pier 6 on the Halifax side. Flames, smoke, and small explosions drew residents to windows and streets. Firefighters moved toward the waterfront. Railway workers, sailors, and civilians had different fragments of information, but no citywide warning system could instantly translate the cargo manifest into a safe evacuation order. The most dangerous place became the glass window from which thousands of people watched. The delay between collision and detonation lasted roughly 20 minutes. That interval sounds like enough time to escape only when the hazard is already understood. It was not. Mont-Blanc carried several kinds of explosive material, and the fire was moving through a complicated cargo arrangement. The crew's abandonment could look like panic rather than technical evidence. Harbor communication was fragmented, streets were busy, and the burning ship had already drifted beside a populated industrial district. Railway dispatcher Vincent Coleman received warning that the munitions ship was burning. Instead of leaving immediately, he sent a message intended to stop an incoming passenger train. The train was halted before reaching the devastated area, while Coleman was killed in the explosion. Later retellings sometimes polish the message into perfect dialogue, but the secure fact is the decision. He used the communication system available to reduce a second catastrophe, even though the waterfront office remained inside the danger zone. At approximately 9:04, Mont-Blanc detonated. The ship disappeared as a coherent vessel. A pressure wave moved through Halifax and Dartmouth, collapsing structures and turning glass, timber, and metal into projectiles. The blast was followed by fire and a harbor surge that struck low-lying shoreline areas. The exact experience varied block by block. Direct blast near the waterfront, structural collapse farther inland, and shattered windows across a much larger radius. Richmond, the working-class district near Pier 6, absorbed the most severe destruction. Homes, factories, rail facilities, and streets were crushed or burned. The blast damaged or destroyed thousands of buildings across the urban area. Many people who survived the initial pressure wave were trapped beneath debris. Families were separated during the working and school day. The disaster was not one cinematic wave of damage. It was thousands of simultaneous emergencies without intact roads, telephones, or local landmarks. Eye injuries became one of the explosion's defining medical consequences. People had moved toward windows to watch the fire, then the blast drove glass inward. Hospitals treated an extraordinary number of lacerations and damaged eyes. Medical teams improvised triage while their own facilities and staff were affected. The experience influenced emergency medicine, rehabilitation, and services for blind and visually impaired patients. It also explains why the human cost cannot be represented only by the death toll. The harbor surge added a different mechanism. The explosion displaced water and generated waves that swept parts of the shoreline, damaging vessels and carrying debris. Micmac residents of Turtle Grove, already living under severe colonial pressure, lost homes and community space near the water. Their experience is often compressed into the wider city story, yet it shows how the same physical event can deepen existing inequality when recovery power and property rights are uneven. Within minutes, military personnel, firefighters, railway workers, neighbors, and surviving medical staff began rescue. Assistance came from across Nova Scotia, Canada, and the northeastern United States. Boston's relief effort became an enduring part of the memory shared by the two cities. But even organized help faced a second obstacle. A winter storm arrived the next day, blocking roads, slowing trains, and covering debris, while people still needed shelter and treatment. The final death count is commonly given as about 2,000, with roughly 9,000 injured. Exact totals differ slightly across records because some victims died later, some bodies were not identified, and administrative boundaries varied. Responsible history should keep that uncertainty visible instead of pretending one perfectly precise number can capture the disaster. The scale is secure even when the last digit is not. Investigations examine navigation decisions, wartime harbor rules, and responsibility for the collision. Early legal findings shifted during appeals, illustrating how technical blame can change as evidence and maritime law are reconsidered. The broader system failure was larger than one bridge decision. Dangerous cargo, constrained water, imperfect communication, crowded neighborhoods, and no rapid public warning combined into a consequence none of the individual participants could reverse once the fire took hold. Reconstruction changed Halifax's north end. The Hydrostone district used fire-resistant concrete blocks, planned streets, and modern services. Public health, housing, social welfare, and disability support developed under the pressure of mass need. These improvements should not turn the catastrophe into a story in which destruction was somehow beneficial. They show how institutions can learn after the cost has already been paid by people who had no control over the original risk. The Halifax Explosion remains a lesson in hidden inventory. A burning ship, warehouse, or train may look like an ordinary industrial fire, while its cargo changes the entire response. Modern hazardous material placards, manifests, exclusion zones, and coordinated incident command exist because responders need the information that spectators in 1917 did not have. The crucial question is not only what is burning, but what energy can be released if the fire reaches it. 20 minutes separated collision from explosion. That fact tempts hindsight. Surely the city could have been warned. But warnings work only when information reaches the right people, is believed, and carries an action they can complete in time. Halifax had fragments of all three and a complete system of none. The ship burned in plain sight. The danger stayed invisible until the instant it transformed the harbor and the city around it.